Before we move on to questions, Susan is going to speak to us about her experience with Hanna recording your book. So I'm going to hand over to Susan now.
Thank you, Amy. This is unplanned, but I think, Hanna, if I can just say one or two of the things that were thrown up during the process that we went through together, of distilling into an audiobook your experiences that were very, very close to me. If I can just say one or two really trivial things. One or two really trivial things were that so many of the places that you mentioned, Coventry, Croydon, Sussex, etc., these all had a parallel in my own life. I was born in Croydon. My mother lived in Leamington Spa. She watched the bombing of Coventry Cathedral from her bedroom window. We lived in Forest Row, which was not far away from where you ended up teaching. So, and that was before we moved to South Africa. So we left for South Africa. But my father was a Viennese Jew. He was not brought up Jewish, but he was born as a Jew in Vienna. And when he and his family went in different ways to finally meet up again in England, his younger sister was helped by the Quakers, basically smuggled across Europe with a train ticket onto a boat off the coast of Rotterdam. My father went a different way. He was not quite 19. And he landed up as an intern, in an intern camp. He was one of the Dunero boys that landed up in this intern camp at Hay in Australia. From whence, well, while he was there, he learnt beautiful English, and when they were declared no longer to be enemy aliens, he changed his name and joined the British Army. As he said, he wrote to his stepfather, "I'm going to go and give Jenny a bashing." At that point, he had learned his first English. It was from a British Army officer, and he always spoke beautiful English. So we had this dichotomy in our family as well. And I married a German whom I met many years later. And I have two children here in Germany. My now ex-husband's family, his aunt specifically, supported the Nazis. And they would go into the flats of Jews who had been disappeared, taken away, and they would help themselves to a few little bits and pieces before the actual, before the contents were meticulously labeled the following day. They'd sort of have, you know, a little picture frame here or whatever. So in a way, my children are a kind of sticking plaster, if you will, of European history. And my youngest son was the recording engineer who recorded your story, as you know, Hanna.
Yeah.
And he was absolutely, he found it a harrowing experience because he had heard all the stories, or many of the stories, but he hadn't a clue of what the minutiae, what the process was, the step-by-step process that you take very efficiently, if I may say, and almost unemotionally, but beautifully, you take the reader through this movement, through these steps. And he was moved to tears, as indeed often I was. It was very hard sometimes to finish those audio files, and there were many of them. Many places where it was just, you know, can't finish this. And because I now live in Germany, and I've lived in Germany now for longer than anywhere else in my adult life, I have taken on dual nationality. I'm now a German, as well as English. But there is this tremendous duality of feelings, of emotions, I remember when I first came to Germany, I would look at people with grey hair and think to myself, you must have known, because that was how I felt. But now, it's not just a question of you must have known. I think, Hanna, you said something just a second ago about the healing power of forgiveness. There's another thing. If we think back to 2015 and Angela Merkel taking in more refugees from Syria and from other children on their own and from everywhere else, and saying, wir schaffen das, we'll manage, for which she was pilloried and castigated and made to feel extremely unpopular. And Bill, I can see on your face you're nodding. You know exactly what I mean.
I do, yeah.
So perhaps there is this full circle, perhaps there is, or if it's not a circle, perhaps it's just another one of these moves in the German psyche, if you like, that is coming to terms with the fact that in Europe, the Nazis eradicated almost everything that had to do with creativity and beauty. All the musicians and the eccentrics and some of the, you know, the intelligentsia. And we are still feeling this today. And books such as your experience, where you have taken your experience into another environment, into another culture, I find very, very pregnant with meaning, not just historical, but also very personal. And there are many people like me. There are not that many, but there are many people like me who feel that way. And I can only say thank you. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share in that very intimately. Thank you for your support. And I'm quite sure that I join with everybody to say that book was one of the most important and signal books that I've ever read and read aloud and been able to be part of. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Susan. That was really, really wonderful. I can see on Hannah's face how much that has meant. It's really been a really emotional experience listening to Hannah's story, and then, you know, listening to what the school children are doing today, and your experience, Susan, of recording the book. It's overwhelming. It's such an interesting time to hear all these stories together on one platform. I'm going to try and unmute everyone, but I can't remember how to do that. So bear with me, so sorry.
Actually, you may not want to unmute everyone, but they could unmute themselves if they
Yeah,
have a question.
Absolutely. If you want to, what I suggest now is unmuting yourself and giving all our speakers, especially Hannah, a real big round of applause.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Thank you, Hannah. Thank you, Hannah. Thank you.
Bravo! Bravo!
Bravo!
Bravo!
Thank you so much. So yeah, I mean, now it's open up to the audience now for questions. We can either do questions via the chat, or if you want to unmute yourself or wave at us, feel free to speak. Yeah, Imran?
Yeah, hi. I have a question for Hannah. Well, first of all, actually, to also Bill and Andy, it was a great talk. Thank you so much. Andy, I will definitely be emailing you later on to ask more about the Kinder Hostel. Hannah, can you just tell me a bit more about your arrival in Coventry and West Midlands in '39, and how the atmosphere was at the time, specifically the fact that you were Jewish and the welcoming of, well, the other into the community?
I think that's a really penetrating question, Imran.
I think, first of all, my perception was limited to that of a 7-year-old who did not understand English. You know, I didn't know one word of English, and most of the people I met did not know one word of German. So I don't want to, I can give you my feelings and emotions and concepts, but I don't know how much weight they have, really.
They have weight, trust me, they do.
It was a very bewildering time when we reached Liverpool Street Station. You know, one of the things reflecting on that time is that the Kindertransport was a very hurried arrangement, and that there wasn't a lot of money, and the whole coordination between Jewish groups and the Quakers, it was a very cobbled together event. It wasn't a smooth operation where those organizing it had time to really be efficient. So I think one of the things is that I was caught up in an event that was very created as you went along. But my first memory of being in England was being on the platform and other children who had been on that train being connected with their foster parents, or the ones who were going to take care of them. And then there were 8 of us who were without anybody to meet us. My parents had put me on that train without having in mind who would take care of me. So that just makes me realize that from the other end, it was a really panicked situation. There was the awareness of the danger, and we have to do it, but it was really a leap in the dark. You know, I think of it like Moses being put in a basket on the Nile. You know, that I think that's the kind of thing. So that's the setting. Now, the people who actually took those that were left was a group that came from the middle of England, and they belonged to a sect called Christadelphians, who had a real interest in the refugees because they had a real connection to Jews in their theology. And so this was a group of men who came to Liverpool Street Station and collected us. And that was not totally easy because nobody there among them spoke German. And of course, we didn't understand them. And Susie, the oldest one among us, was telling us to behave. But we had, our labels were round. There was a string with a round label, and that identified us. And somebody had impressed on me that you just have to keep that on. And of course, they were concerned that I would lose it, and then who would I be? So these men were trying to make connection with us, and they, you know, English teasing. So he tried to take, one of them tried to take the label off me. You know, I think he was just, didn't know what to make the connection. And that really upset me, you know. So it was a very fraught situation. Now, when we got to England, I think we were kind of a bit exotic, you know. We were interesting for some people. And in this Christadelphian community, different ones had volunteered to look after the children. And it was also somewhat problematic in beginning school because I didn't know the English way. I didn't feel that there was anti-Semitic or antagonistic feeling, but there definitely, you know, at that time in England, we didn't have the concept of trauma counseling, of caring for the emotions of the child. I think the general atmosphere for the kinder was, you are very lucky, you know, and you should be very pleased about what has happened, you know, and don't think too much about that other stuff in Germany. I don't know if I've really answered what you were after, you know.
You have. Thank you so much. Everything I get to learn more about Kindertransport from like first-hand experience is always a joy. So thank you so much. It really means a lot. Thank you.
I'd like to say something. My mother was on a Kindertransport from Frankfurt, Germany to Norwich, and then she lived in Birmingham for a while. There's a book which I had just told Amy about called Survivors, which is about Jewish refugees in Birmingham, and it talks about the life there and the experience of some of the older kinder, which I think for those of you who are interested in the reactions of the British to the German Jewish children, this book is really interesting because I guess Hanna was quite young, so her experiences were relative to her age, but my mother was 15, and they were told not to speak German in the streets, which of course, if you didn't speak any other language, was really a problem because you couldn't say anything. It was very difficult to work anywhere because you were immediately identified as a German. They were going to war and people were nervous about it. My mother stayed in a home where the father was a Quaker and he was very enthusiastic about her being there, and the mother was ashamed that she had a German-speaking girl in her house. You know, these were not all simple stories. They were complicated by the world situation and by the personalities involved and the reasons why people did it in the first place. And I really think that having lived with this story my whole life, that it's worth delving a little deeper into the complexity of what it was like for somebody to arrive, to be plunked down into another country that was about to go to war with the same country where your parents still were. So anyway, this book is, I can put it on the side there. There's only a few copies because it's published, it was published in 1988, and it's pretty informative. But there are other accounts, I think, also. So, in fact, I have to say that I've been a member of the Kindertransport Association since it started. My mother went to one of the first events in London, and there's a lot out there. You just have to look for it. So.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm going to purchase a copy of the book, and Hanna, I'll purchase you a copy and send it to you.
Oh, I would love that.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely fine, especially because Birmingham is just next door to Coventry as well. So, yeah, thank you for telling us about that book. It's a real, really something that we'll absolutely look into further, and thank you for sharing your family stories as well. It's great to see everybody on the chat communicating their family stories and their connections with Hanna. Is there anybody else that wants to ask a question? Yeah, Caroline?
Hi, thanks everyone. Hi Hanna. I know you briefly touched on when you first arrived not feeling emotionally cared for in a way. Did you keep in touch with the people that originally looked after you and maybe other people in your story? So you sort of got married, maybe moved away?
Yeah, you know, I write a bit about the family in the book.
Oh,
and also there's a picture of them. They were much older. The family that took me in permanently because I actually went to two families. They had a son who was just getting married. And so during their lifetime, we kept contact. What more to say? Yeah, I think I wrote mostly about life experiences with this family. And also the feeling that it wasn't really my family. There was a kind of leave taking of them to go to college that was pretty painful, but there was also a return to them and seeking to connect with them. But I would say I did keep up until they died. But I wouldn't say it was a warm sense of belonging. I didn't belong.
Thank you.
I think Linda has a question.
Yes, Hannah, your story is so powerful, not just in the sense of your journey, but actually the part about forgiveness. And I've wondered so much about, it's such in contrast to, you know, a book like The Sunflower, Simon Wiesenthal or whatever. And I was curious about how much impact have you seen for others as you shared the story or as people read your books? I know you do a lot of speaking now. Have there been many that you've seen responding to this? Almost you provide an invitation for others to enter into their own story where forgiveness is needed. Have you seen much impact from that?
Linda, the story that jumps into my mind with your question is an email that I got last week. And the email was from a teacher in the Odenwald. And last year, I was invited by her to read from my book and tell a little about it to her class. And I guess the kids were about 15, 16-year-olds. And after I shared the story, the teacher wrote to me and said that listening, she had felt that she should visit the place in northern Germany where her brother died in mysterious circumstances. Now, the part she was referring to was my going back to the places in Gmünd where I had been hurt, and the forgiveness and the release of the pain that I had experienced there. It was also to do with going to the actual place where my parents were gassed and where they were incinerated. And that was part of my healing journey, to go to that place. So she expressed how much the death of her brother had been a no-talk issue in their family, and that she really felt she needed healing from the story and the residue of this, and really desired it for her family. So as the result of hearing about my journey to Poland and this sense of forgiveness, she wrote to me last week and said, last February, I went to this place. I'd never been there before. And I was amazed to meet the policeman who had been involved in dealing with the death of my brother. And she said, I went and prayed there at this place. And for me, the healing has begun. I feel as though the darkness has lifted. And so you see, I really feel, but by your question, Linda, there are these sense of the national wrong and the historical wrong. But I think there's so much going on in all our lives today with pains and hurts that I think the Kindertransport journey, my story and others' stories, have relevance for how do we deal with our stuff.
Yeah, I think so.
Yes.
Hanna,
So powerful. Thank you.
Oh, sorry, Linda. Oh,
No, I was just saying.
Oh, God. Yeah, sorry, Hanna. Sorry, Linda, as well. I wondered, Hanna, if you'd share with everybody all the campaigning that you've been doing in Arizona to get the Holocaust taught in schools. You've been doing some really tremendous work. I wondered if you could speak about that.
Well, you know, I thought a lot about your reference to that. You know, we've talked about it. And, you know, I see my role actually as very much behind the scenes. You know, there are times when I am invited by others to do things in public, and I'm really happy to do that. And there are other things that are very personal, like the journey to Poland. That was kind of hidden. And to me, that carries great significance also. And then another thing about my journey when I think about it is that my role is to encourage others, to put, you know, the local people. So in Gmünd and Stolperstein, I was to encourage Georg Toporowski and that group. In Arizona, we have a very dear friend who is the chief of staff to the Speaker of the House of Representatives. You know, he's a really neat guy. And he's read the book, and, you know, we've had lots of conversations. And he is the one that got this thing moving. Holocaust education in Arizona schools, which is not mandated, it hasn't been. And he's worked incredibly hard because this is difficult. You know, political, I mean, being invited to these groups discussing Holocaust education at the House of Representatives in Arizona, it was an eye-opener. You know, to get anything done politically, it involves so much compromise. It's so slow and so difficult. So I felt my presence was just to be this encourager, you know. And so it's just amazing how it's happened. And this is an interesting story. The day the vote was taken, the evening before, there had been the most awful disagreement on the House floor, and people had said horrible things to each other. You know, we are very divided politically in America. You know, we've got the two sides. So there was this awful clash, and actually people were quite ashamed of themselves. So the next morning, they were going to have a vote on this resolution about Holocaust education, and the thing got passed anonymously. And I have a feeling it got passed because the people wanted to do something that was a little bit better than what they'd done the night before, you know. So all that to say, I'm a little cog in the wheel, and I'm just overjoyed about what's happening in Arizona.
Absolutely, it's wonderful to see everything that you're doing with other people in Arizona. It's really marvelous. Has anybody else got a question? Just going to look on the other page. No. Okay, well, I think it's probably about time to kind of wrap things up now. And yeah, thank you so much for everybody for joining us all over the world. It's really, really wonderful to see you all. Hanna, do you want to end on a note?
Well, I would like to say God bless you all. I mean, there's so many countries and walks of life represented, and I just want to thank you for hearing this, and I want to give a blessing upon you that this would go further, let it go further in our countries.
And a perfect note to end on. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, and especially thank you to Hanna, thank you to Bill, thank you to Andy. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you to Amy for organising it too.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, yeah, well, hopefully we may be able to do something again soon. But yeah, for now, enjoy your day, enjoy your evening, wherever you are. And yeah, thank you so much for coming and participating today. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.